Forgetting to do sound check again. There we go. So made some improvements. Trying to remember what I covered since I last streamed. Let's see. Okay. So images are getting loaded asynchronously now rather than the data being continuously present. We've now got this like little border down the side of here which highlights which pools are part of a group and collection, because you know you've got those open there, those are the pools, those are part of the entire collection. Because beforehand, no border, it was all just one list, you couldn't see which one was which aside from the subtle context of plus group plus pool. The pool configs now show the name of things. Oh, they should do. I need to fix that, because that said the pool config last time I looked. Did I only do the fleeing production dialogue? I bet I did. Yeah, I've only done that one. Right. I'll update the to-do list live. Pool name not on config dialog was only added to fling production dialog. So switching pools is a little bit faster. I think I mentioned like that during previous stream. The recalculation algorithm's a little bit better, so it now isolates the production boundaries from each other. So if one thing doesn't feed into anything else, it only gets recalculated once. If there's like inputs and outputs, then it gets like recalculated amongst all its inputs and outputs. So renderings faster. I think I've like rewound a bit too far here, but we're going to go through it anyway. The image placeholders reserve space while they're loading. The images get displayed if the image's data arrives before names, which is most useful on here because previously it would show loading in like a really kludgy manner, and then it would load in the names and the images at the same time. Now what it does is it shows like everything, but you know, if the image's data isn't loaded, it'll just like have a blank spot that you can, but your tool still, the tooltips will still work. Well, it's not in this case. Like there isn't a tooltip, but like in these cases, like the tooltips there will still work. And then obviously, like once the names load in, names will load in. In cases where names are needed but they're not loaded in, I believe I put it so it would use the class name or the class suffix. So it'll say like desk or INC for that. Let's see. calculator view to start loading on landing page, start interfering with the rendering of the landing page. Well, I can mimic that one by popping over to it. So if I open DevTools, throttle the network to slow 3G, and then load me save. You can see there's a loading page, and then a progress bar as it fetches the content and modules it needs in order to render the calculator. So what happened previously was you click the button, and it would look like nothing was happening if you're on a slow connection, which was, you know, a bad user experience. It's better to show a loading screen than to not show a loading screen. We've got the information button added alongside switching the display mode. So in calculator input mode, that needs fixing. Huh. I might have been a bit overzealous with the removal of some of the recalculation things. Ingredients list doesn't get displayed when it should. May have been overzealous with removal of post change calculation, because once I got the isolation boundary feature in, the change feature didn't seem to be necessary anymore, so I removed it. It looks like I might need to add it back in, but not as overly complicated, because the main issue, once I got the isolation boundary thing in, it meant that it was triggering the call stack too large error, because it was going, like, it was tracing all the back references, and especially if you got into a case where you had an infinite loop, the getter didn't have access to the full state of what was being looked at, so there wasn't anything to stop that from going on. So we'll amend that, saying may need to add change getter back, but in a simpler fashion. So can only, like, rather than tracking if the inputs have changed, just track itself. So yeah. But anyway, so we've got this display mode here, so we can see that in calculator mode you can go change a bunch of stuff. In display the report mode, you just see the report of all the items. This has been added to the group level, which isn't everything on that. There we go. Got fuse modular frames, so we've got the group level production, the collection level production, and then the everything level production, which is, there's a slight delay on there because it has to resolve all the calculations for everything. When I say resolve the calculations, I mean stuff like this. The rest of the math's already resolved. So, information good. There we go, back to the list of the things. Yeah, so there's the isolation boundaries thing, which I went over, so that's that out of the way. Different implementation of it. One thing I noticed was that I had request animation frame and request idle callback in a bunch of places where I was looping over what I thought were expensive calls, and it turns out having the delay in made it take longer than necessary. So I took it out a bunch of places. A consequence of this does mean that on first load, which like you can notice briefly on here, when the delays were in place, this would show more meaningful information because we've got this progress feedback up here. So that would show exactly what it was doing as it was doing it, because the request animation frame request idle callback would put some delays that would lock the UI thread or block rendering from getting updated. So there's that. There's a bug fixed. Well, it's not tracked as a bug, but I put it in as like a featurey thing. The deferred rendering mode that I've got in, where the code, like the MVC-esque code that I implemented to make things a little bit easier to maintain. You can say the view needs rendering now, like immediately-ish, or you can say it needs rendering eventually. If it's set to render eventually, it just means like, oh, we've made an update to the data that needs to be displayed, but we're in the process of like still doing stuff. So just, update whenever you can, rather than, immediately on the next frame. Helps keep things a little bit smooth and means that the calculator looks like it's doing something, rather than having the entire thread like locked in an expensive request animation frame thing. Oh yes, relating to this one, one of the things that I changed was with the request animation frame request idle callback thing, was rather than having the process like the task that I was deferring inside the callback, I changed it in various places. So the request animation frame and the request idle callback were being used to resolve a promise. So you await that promise and then execute the task, meaning that you don't trigger Chrome's violation alert saying this callback took too long. So, yay. Little bit of additional stuff, if I can get one on the scroll bar. So the header now has padding, so this doesn't disappear immediately into the buttons, so that's good. I did look into the node graph based approach with the isolation boundaries, but I've got a bit of a headache trying to juggle all of the states in my head at once, and the current implementation seems to work well enough. So there's like 63 pools like in here at the moment, and it breaks them down into 3 isolation boundaries. So if I need to recalculate something in the main facility, it doesn't recalculate the space elevator facility. Saves a lot of stuff. Let's see, next one. So reduce the size of the active DOM by hiding contents of pools not being displayed. So it does impact performance somewhat, especially on lower end devices. I once had a smartphone that I use as like an emergency thing. Its memory constraints were so bad that it crashed immediately if you loaded Facebook, which is one of the pre-installed apps that you couldn't uninstall. So like, yeah. That was kind of daft. So what I've done here is, when I'm switching these around between pools, there is a very subtle delay now, which it's kind of hard to notice a lot of the time, but I notice it. The pool container is there with, well, sometimes it's got the name in because of the render mode switching. This is like, this is always there, and it's like this stuff that changes. what happens is if it's not being displayed, then this stuff just isn't in the DOM. That takes the total DOM nodes to render the page down from like 17,000 down to 9,000. I didn't benchmark how that affected performance. I was just vaguely aware from past experience that having a needlessly huge DOM tree is bad, and given that I'm going to be having a hell of a lot more information going into this like this playthrough's calculator save, it's gonna, like, you know, bloat quite heavily otherwise. There possibly is room for improvement with reducing that down further. It's just like, for now, it's, you know, good enough. Right, so that's the ideas and features gone over, well, as well as some of the bugs. Now let's go over the bugs. So the web worker experiment didn't go well. That's on the bug list, or the bug/issue list from the 27th to 28th, for me to like revisit at some point. What happened was, like, the actual calculation process did work. It was just getting the data back. I was trying to remap it and then pass it back into the, like, normal calculation validation process. Because it's crossing a worker boundary, I can't send instances across. So I have to send, like, the raw JSON. Which means that every time the calculator runs, the data has to be validated by the JSON schema process. Whereas in the in-thread approach, I'm using a typed implementation, so I don't have to do that. It only does that on the first load of JSON data. As is, the calculation process is kind of async now anyway, so there shouldn't be any noticeable switch, like any extra work needed in, like, the UI portion of things to indicate that, you know, the threaded calculation is going on. This means I need to fix that data transposition at some point. The image, like, images getting re-rendered during DOM calculations being fixed. They're now cached appropriately. One of the issues I had in was the data was wrapped behind that async load promise. So every time, like the first time you would call like the display of an image, it would go do, like, an async function to fetch the JSON data that houses the images. And while that was loading, it would load the placeholder. Once it loaded, once the promise had resolved, it would load the image in. Consequence of that meant that every time that render pass was called to resolve that template, that promise would get re-executed, like, needlessly. So that's been tweaked and cached and what have you, so that no longer happens. The scroll bars have been added in. I'm just trying to find one that's got all of, like, a large amount of scroll bars. There we go. Yeah, so for some reason I had it so, like, this wouldn't have scroll bars. It's been fixed. Let's see. So save file loading on slow connection gives no indication save file is loading. I've demonstrated that was fixed with the loading screen. The implementation is flexible enough that I can reuse it for other stuff. Names.json and images.json are re-downloaded. So there was an issue where I would set them to link rel preload, and the browser would preload them. But then once I was fetching them, it would fetch them again. Now, while I'm talking through this, I am remembering that there is something I can do in the fetch header stuff and the link attribute that might have impacted this, but I forgot about that at the time I fixed it, but I fixed it anyway. So that's solved. Add pool to group does trigger switch to pool now. So does add group to collection. I'm not going to demonstrate that because then I'll have to reload again, and well, actually it may as well, because then I can just make sure any other demonstrations work. So we click add group. We now go to that group. There is a slight issue where if I'm interacting with this collection and I've got this collection open, it doesn't automatically open that collection. I'm not sure if it should change that or not. I can add it in as an idea or feature, saying add a toggle setting for controlling whether the sidebar tree auto closes expands items as needed. So we've got this full display mode here, which opens or closes everything. But one of the things I would like to do is if I'm navigating around different pools, that the sidebar automatically open and maybe even scroll. Maybe even scroll to current pool on pool switch history change. Because this can get long enough that the scroll bars, well, put full display on, it'll do it. So if I am like clicking around in here, it might be useful to have the scroll, like the browser scroll to element functionality kick in, such that there's something other than this tiny little dot that indicates that this is the current item that we're looking at. I forget what that bug was about, but it's marked off as fixed. Yay. Loading new save doesn't load specified pool. That's probably been fixed. It's marked off as fixed. I don't remember what was involved in it. But there we go. Recalculate all seems to leave busy status turned on. Well, we can test that and demonstrate that right now. I'll just reload and go to the space elevator demo save just so it won't take us long. There we go. Bloop, bloop, bloop. That happens so fast that you don't even see the status feedback. That's a bad demo. Yeah, so it's running recalculate all. You've got the wait cursor on there, you've got the little thinking emoji, and you've got the feedback there, and then busy mode's gone off. Yay. Modals no longer seem to open as modal, just normal dialogues. I might have misunderstood this bug when I saw it happening, otherwise I might have fixed it in the process of like fixing other shit, but when I was going through it I found it was only the Flame production dialogue that was doing that, and that's because I refactored the dialogue opening code and forgot to add in the boolean flags that say open this as a modal. There was also an issue where sometimes the code wouldn't find a modal because of this whole trying to optimize the DOM prematurely thing and render frame execution thing. So what would happen in those cases is the request to open the dialog would get processed. The dialog wouldn't be there, the code would throw an error. The next render would happen, the dialog would be added to the DOM and then get opened because of the state of the well, state class, state instance. That's been fixed by having the dialogues always in the DOM, just not necessarily having the contents there. Recalculate pool doesn't always seem to take 2 clicks, so that may be fixed. I haven't marked it as fixed. There might be some circumstances where it still kicks in, so yeah. Current deferred rendering approach results in lag for render updates on larger pools. That might have been addressed somewhat with the isolation boundaries, but I've left it in because as I add more facilities, because we've got a lot. We've been through like 3 or 4 streams, and we still haven't finished putting this facility in yet. So we've got that set of facilities. That set of production floors, that's another facility. That set of production floors, that's going to be another facility. And that one. Even though I refer to this as the main facility, which is why it is flagged as a collection. And then we have that facility over there, where we have the steel, concrete and iron rods being made. And then the mineral and explosives being manufactured over there. Obviously, the space elevator facility is already added. We've got the power generation facilities. I'm probably going to end up expanding the to-do list a lot there because the calculator currently doesn't track power whatsoever. That's intentional. One of the reasons that started making me all calculator was just because of the way I'm structuring the data, but one of the other things is there's features in Skim I don't use that a lot of other people use, so it's not ideal for me. I'm not its intended audience. I don't like being told how to build the thing. I just want to know, I want to build, in this case, 3.375 HMF a minute. And then it tells me I need 1.5 modular frame, and then I need like all of these things as well, because if I'm making the modular frame, I need these. If I'm making the steel ingots, I need these things, etc. Just need to be told what to think. In terms of power, I haven't tested it yet. One of the things that I've got built into this calculator is you can add buildings, which is displayed on Space Elevator Phase Demo. So we have the actual thing group here, so we can see Space Elevator requires these parts to build. So if I am gonna put in, I haven't even checked if they're listed, because this is automatically generated. I only look for stuff, I only know the stuff's missing when I go looking for it. So we can see we can add a call generator here. Boop. Oop. Yeah, that's got bugs in. So we can see that's how many parts we need. One of the things I could add for fuel generators is saying this generates this much power. The issue I'm going to have is the burn rates for different fuels, because this just says in order to build a coal generator you need that. I do have support for fake recipes. I could also add it in as a separate view, I could add it in as a separate page, I could do something with it. Basically, what I want to be able to do is say, add a call generator saying this many have getting fed coal, this many are getting fed petro coal, this many getting fed whatever, and then it tell me how much water and coal I need, how many megawatts it's going to produce. If I was going to be doing such a thing, one of the things I would be doing is recommending, well, maybe either recommending, highlighting, doing something which mirrors how I build coal generators and power generation facilities now, is isolating a portion of the power generation facilities to power itself. So if I say I have X amount of miners requiring X amount of coal, then I could do some stuff to say this is how many megawatts you're going to need in order to power the facility, and then like make recommendations there. So yeah, let's add that to the ideas list, because I'm talking through it now. It's getting interesting. Look into adding either to the calculator or a separate page view, etc. A power generation calculator that says how much a given fuel, water, etc. a facility will need, how much power is required to power it, and possibly make recommendations for the number of machines to isolate from the grid. Also taking into account per machine overclocking. Maybe. Bloop. So yeah, other facilities. So there's the coal generation, the fuel generation. I might list them as separate facilities in the same collection. Like two different groups in the same collection, rather. And we've got the plastics facility over there, nitrogen packaging facility over there, and then the ingots, sheets and bauxite facility over here. So, you know, lots of fun time. And getting back to reading through the books. Can see why State of Dev on the Coffee Stain streams takes so long to get through sometimes. Production flicking dialogue not opening as promptly as expected. That's largely fixed by the aforementioned change, where I am now always having the dialogues in the DOM and just toggling whether the contents are there. Soft locking the landing page came back, so I made changes to how save files were loaded. One of the issues that I think it was Ondar found was if you opened this and then hit escape, you couldn't interact with anything else anymore. Part of that was related to me using dialogue elements for both the load view and the actual page. That, like, the underlying issue has been fixed, but I've also switched this to not be a dialogue anymore, because it was displayed as a non-modal dialogue. I just put it in as like that purely because the dialogue style rendered it sort of like this, like centered. This is a little bit nicer, I think. So, I mean, you can kind of see that, you know, that's the size of a dialogue versus, you know, article content. It's narrower. With the isolation, the production isolation boundary code, I was accidentally returning too many pills. So, let's see, what was the breakdown in numbers? I messaged somebody about it. Yes. Okay, so there's 63 pools in my v21 save. The initial code pass of it working had 60 pools, or 68 plus pools into 20 boundaries. There's now 3 boundaries. Yay! Pretty straightforward. Yes, I mentioned the broken change properties. That's now caused issues with recalculate pool not working. I think once I've done this like talk through, I'm going to end up trying to fix that and then actually stream the adding more data. I was initially planning to come on and stream putting more data in, but once I found that bug and I'm doing this slightly lengthier than intended state of dev, it makes sense to go fix that first. Loading the JSON doesn't load the calculator CSS, so I changed the loading of CSS, so now the landing page is even smaller, so it loads ever so slightly quicker on a slow connection. The actual page is, let's see, 2.1 kilobytes after compression. I think it was 6 before that. So this page only shows, like, only loads the CSS that it needs, and then this loading screen loads in the CSS to display this before it shows this. It's very straightforward. It's not as automatic as it could be. I'm aware there are CSS post-processing tools where you take a page and it strips out, like, it's basically tree shaping for CSS, which just strips out all the CSS that's not being rendered in a given page. But because of the interactive nature of the calculator, that's not it doesn't lend itself to that. I would have to have a view that has everything in the DOM, or maybe like generate all possible states. So it's not worth the effort. It's just, you know, presented separately. Let's see, pool name not on config dialog, was only on production dialog. So I added a thing in which said put the pool names in so it would say something meaningful, and I ticked it off, and then I didn't add it in here. Oh wait, let's rewind that because I forgot to switch sources. Weep. So we go in here. So this now shows the name. It was ticked off and it said that this shows the name. It doesn't show the name. It just says collection config. And then of course there's the you know, more annoying bug with recalculate pool after change not being run anymore. So yeah, it's going to be fun. We're getting there slowly. So there's probably not any point in me actually making a save here if I'm going to end stream and fix like that calculate the change bug. So we'll just call it there and come back sometime tonight, but if I'm not streaming like within the next hour or so, I won't be streaming until the morning. So that's gonna be all for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.